Hey, good morning, this is Jelle, growing bonsai, and we're looking today at this big olive. This was styled 2 months ago, 3 months ago, and before that I did a repotting and initial styling last year. Now you can see these very long runners have started to form. This is not the regular fruit-bearing olive. No, this is a wild olive. Look at how small these leaves have become, even though the ramification is not all that great and I've been fertilizing heavily. They can even reduce further than this. It is time to remove the wire. I'm going to trim it back, I'm going to wire it out, and then I'm going to look at some of these cut marks. I worked in my previous video here on the Deadwood. This was a big stump. That's almost invisible. I can now start making the apex here, and let's dive into it. Runners like these are a good sign that you have a very healthy bonsai. You can see all this growth is from just the last 2 or 3 months. Olives don't really need to be in a hot, dry climate. Also in a humid, warm climate like mine, it works quite well. In winter I protect them a little bit, but what am I going to do now with this long runner? You can see it has popped side branches at every previous leaf, and I only want one of those because otherwise you get trifurbification. I just want bifurbification. Lengthwise, this is never going to be longer than the branch below it, so I'm just going to make it a little shorter so I know what I'm working with. Then I can just go through and in an alternating fashion remove one of the side branches. One on the left, one on the right, bottom. So I'm just thinning this out. All the ones that are in the bottom need to go. And then I don't want only branches on one side or the other, but because there's a branch here in the back, I'm going to leave more on this side than on that side. Then with a bit of wire I can place this here in parallel and it forms a pad. This branch also way too long. This fashion I'm going to first do a coarse pruning of the whole tree, and then I'm going to remove all the wire. Now for the main pruning work, I just use my normal regular knob cutter, and I've got a little wire cutter here to work on the wire, and just 1.5 millimeters of aluminium to style it. Then for the Deadwood work, I'm not sure what I'm going to use. Probably a chisel, but maybe I'm also just going to use my carving tool. Wiring an olive bonsai is important in the early stages of development, but once the main branches have set, more and more you're going to rely on the clip and grow method. But this is still young, and therefore I do need to put a little bit of wire on. Now let's get the wire off and see whether the branches stay in place. Now what you can tell is there's a lot of wire on this tree, because I wired out every single branch that was on there last time. And I did it quite loose, because olive branches do swell up a lot during the growing season, especially when they're happy, and this tree really is happy. I don't know what I've done here. As you can tell, I am unwiring by just uncoiling it. This might result in a few leaves dropping, but that's not a problem because olives backbud like crazy once leaves are dropping. This already looks promising. It holds its shape, it holds its position. This is really, really great. And just do this right for the whole tree. I'm just going to remove all the wire. A happy, healthy olive will do this as well. They will throw growth from the trunk everywhere. And ideally you rub it away as soon as it appears, because it creates scars that are hard to get rid of. Unfortunately, this will happen until the tree is so dark on the inside that there's no more sunlight on the trunk. This was one of the branches that gave me the reason for unwiring. You can see the wire has been swallowed pretty much by the branch. This is actually a little bit late for unwiring. I should have done this a week or two earlier. We had hot weather last week and that caused this to swell enormously. And because I put such nice little bends in there, this branch has responded stronger than other branches. I am going to leave it in place. I do expect this branch to triple, quadruple in thickness before the tree is done. So I hope this scar will just grow out over time. Branches directly at the base of a branch I remove. I don't want it too cluttered all the way on the inside. These are just vertical stalks that don't help with structure. They just result in big scars. Not all branches create inner ramification easily. You see at the end there's lots of side branches, but here on the inside they don't grow all that much. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to reduce this to this first happy side branch. With all this foliage gone, this is triggered to grow stronger, and here you now have a nice movement with a continuation and a side branch. And going through a tree, this is something to keep an eye out for. These big clusters where you have a lot of growth in one spot, but the rest of the branch is bare. So this is the one I just thinned out. But here you have a similar effect, that this is quite heavy. But if I just prune back to this side branch, I don't need to wire, and the inner buds are stimulated. So here also this is quite long, and I can just reduce it in length. In the end, what I want is these inner buds to start developing more rather than the outer ones. Now I think with the pruning I'm pretty much done, and I can just start to slowly put some wire on branches like this one. This one really needs to come out. Now, if you're wiring a branch that already has scarring, then make sure you put the wire in the alternate direction. So the wire here was like this, and now I'm going to make sure it goes in the other direction, perpendicular to the original pattern. And this is a fairly new branch that hasn't been wired, so this needs to be wired completely, and this is just for anchoring. So I just need 1 or 2 loops here around the branch. Just like that, and this I wire all the way until the end. And now of course use the fact that these branches are still thin and really put in quite tight bends where these side branches are all on the outside, and you also have up and downward movement in the branch, so that later on you have a nice undulating moving branch rather than all these straight canes that you normally get with an olive if you just let it grow. Now here, as I have this length anyway, I can rewire this. This will need a new wire anyway. And to make sure that I can connect this branch with these side branches, bending wise, I loop the last end also around the first part of the side branch, that later on, when I wire these two, it is all one unit that moves continuously together. Right. Note that these branches are growing away from each other, but do require a little bit of a similarity in their shape. This will make them look most natural. Now this is competing with the side branch here, so I can just in fact clip this one off and then add a small wire just on this section. Maybe 1.5 millimeters is actually too thick already for this one. And of course, if you have longer branches higher up, you can use these to start filling up the profile so that these become more filled. Just like that. And slowly this now starts building a pad, and over time I'll prune this one back, and there's more side branches here that will also be laid on top over it. This is of course just the building of the scaffolding, right? So this is the basis upon which later the pads are built. So here I'm just setting the structure. And what you can see here, this is a branch with a nice bifurcation at the end, but it's in the wrong direction. Now I'm going to wire and rotate so that the branches end up like this. And here the same thing. They're also not in the same plane, but by rotating I can actually position them. I'm wiring the branch and I'm wiring the wire in the other direction than it was wired before. So you can see here the markings that the wire has left from the previous wiring. So I'm using the wire now in the alternate direction, and that way, if this also scars, it doesn't create a groove at the same place, it creates a groove in the alternative direction. So and now with the wire in place I can manipulate this branch and bring these two side branches in a horizontal plane. I'm going to shorten this one substantially and leave this a little bit longer. But by removing the growing tips I'm actually aiding in further backbudding. Now note that every branch consists of a primary branch. This is basically the length carrying branch. And then it has side branches, and these side branches occur ideally alternatingly on either side. So when I'm pruning, I'm always pruning one shorter than the other, and the longer one is the length carrying branch. This one of course is longer than that one because this is further in the back, and this one should be a little bit longer still. Here I'm getting a few of the vertical branches that are over time going to create the upward pad. I can thin this out a little bit so it has a little bit of space to develop as well, just like that. But these upward little branches I'm also hoping for to get here. Here there's also one developing, here there's one developing, and these will eventually fill the profile. But to get that you need a nice scaffolding of a primary branch with secondary branches, and of that the tertiary branches, which at some point can become the filling of the pad. If you have a very long branch with side branches mostly on one side, what you can do is make this long branch and curve it around with all these side branches on the outside. That way you fill out the perimeter. Here I've got another branch, and this branch I can now slide in here, and this will fill the center of it. And together this will form one foliage pad. In fact, this will become one pad consisting of two main branches and a filling. And this is that same pad, but seen from the front. You can straight away notice that here there's an upward growing branch, and I can shorten that because it sticks out of the profile. This one is threatening to do that, so I'm clipping that back as well. This is a little bit too tall. And this one also. And now we have the beginning of a pad that can now over time fill up more. Now it is Sunday today. That means I'm not going to work on Deadwood right now. I will do that another time, so you'll see me swap clothes in a second. And then I'll continue the video once I can make a bit of noise, because I think it's not just going to be manual work on this one. And of course, if you're wondering how do you get good growth on your olive, they are actually quite hungry. So I fertilize lots and I water lots. It is in a very, very well draining mix. So this doesn't saturate with water. Everything that is too much will just flush through. But with plenty of fertilizer and water and sun, olives can really, really grow. And I suppose this proves the point how fast olives grow. 6 weeks have passed and it is one big bush again with branches popping everywhere here from the trunk that I all need to clean out. I've been lazy. I still haven't worked on the Deadwood. Still need to do that. Saturday today, but the sun is already about to set. Not sure whether I'm going to do that today. Pruning back time, unwiring. Yeah, almost time to unwire. This thing grows so fast. And you see that now here all these inner buds on these pads are pushing, filling it up. And in fact, once again, here I can start a gentle prune back. The more you prune these, the more frequently They show bifurcation, and therefore it fills up a lot more quickly. Now a place like this you can of course open up with a carving tool, but also with a hammer and chisel you can break out little bits and bobs. And now the scar, although it has become a little bit bigger, looks a little bit more natural, and I'm going to take the rounding here at the bottom off a little bit, so that it really looks like a bit of sort of natural dieback. So sometimes if you know that you'll never be able to remove something, you can accentuate it, and that way create a less visible scar, because it is supposed to be there. It looks like it belongs. This is of course still very young and raw, and I might have to work a little bit here on this stump, but this branch is connected right here on the edge, so I don't want to risk breaking it out. And this will now just have to age a little bit, and maybe in spring I'll do a little bit about the little leftover bits. But yeah, most of the stump is now gone. Looks a little bit better, I hope. And I guess with that, this is ready to go into winter. Maybe in spring I'll have a look and put it in a nice pot. But for now I'd say this was Jelle, growing bonsai. Second wiring of an olive tree. And some work on the deadwood. Getting somewhere, and no, I've not forgotten this one. This might actually become another pet there. So I'm leaving that just like this one. This of course still needs to extend quite a bit. See you next time. This was Jelle, growing bonsai.